and I'm Abbas, your host for Laravel Nagpur Meetups. To begin with, I will request everyone to please switch on your camera so that we can take a photograph. Thank you, Punepal. Everyone who has cameras, if you can please switch it on, it will really help. Thanks, Rita. Rutul, Dhaval, Sudipta, Dibjit, Akash. Okay, I think we'll have to. Thanks, Akash. Okay, let me take a pic and then let's start. Okay, thank you everyone. So today we have Shruti Balasa with us. I don't think she needs any kind of introduction. But for those who are, let's say, seeing her for the first time, she is a full stack developer and a tech educator. And she is very, very popular in the Indian tech and Laravel community. So I welcome Shruti. Thank you for speaking at Laravel Meetup, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me. It's my pleasure to always talk at local meetups. It's really nice. It's just a small set of people who are really dedicated, because it's what, like Thursday evening,
Yeah.
and it's not even midweek. It's not the beginning of the week. This is the time you start winding down, and then people actually take interest to join. So this is the best set of people I can talk to, right?
Yeah.
So I'm very happy. And so,
Great.
yeah, let me cross my fingers and then share my screen this time, because the last two times my screen froze. I'm sure it won't happen this time. So here we go. Just let me know if you can see the
Yes, it's working
presentation.
this time.
Okay. And is the resolution good? Because I have minimized it a little bit.
Yeah, looks good, decent enough.
Okay, great. So that's great. And today I'm going to be talking about some of the latest CSS features that you don't want to ignore. What I mean by this is, see, there are a lot of new features that keep coming up in any framework or any language. And some of them will be used, some of them will just get ignored, and some are really very minute that you don't have to care about. You don't have to learn every single new thing that comes into a framework, right? But in the last 2 years, the number of things that have been added to CSS is so much that anybody would be overwhelmed, because CSS was kind of dormant. Like, most of it was done in the last decade, maybe just Flexbox and Grid. Some major changes happened, and after that, nothing much. You wouldn't miss much if you didn't learn anything new. But that's not the case in the last 2 years. A lot of new developments have been happening, and that's why I thought it's great to talk about some of the features. I have handpicked some of the features which I'm going to be talking about today. So let's just get started. I'm Shruti Balasa. I'm a tech educator and a full stack web developer. From past 4 to 5 years, I have been creating courses, writing ebooks, and I have my own YouTube channel. I give small and big talks. So that's about me. You can follow me on social media, mostly Twitter. You can find my handle Shruti Balasa, and you can follow my updates there. So coming back to the talk, like I said, in the last 2 years, there have been more and better features, the ones that you don't want to ignore, than ever before. And that's exactly why we're going to talk. So if you have been following the updates of CSS, if at all you write CSS, you work with CSS actively, and if you've been following some people who talk about CSS, maybe some newsletters, blogs, or anything like that, you might have heard about multiple terms in the last few months, maybe like subgrid, container queries, style queries, custom properties, nesting, cascade layers, conditional CSS, hash selector, new color schemes like LCH and lab, and so on. Some of these you might have heard, some of these you may not have heard, some you might have actually explored a little bit, and but it's overwhelming, right? So many new features, when they come, you just don't know what to learn, or should I even get into this? So I know a lot of people who say, I don't care about new features unless they're supported in multiple browsers, right? Especially when it comes to CSS, you cannot control who is using what browser. You cannot tell them, hello boss, don't use Internet Explorer, please use Chrome. You cannot do that. So you don't know what kind of browsers people use, and you don't want to learn something new unless it's supported by majority of the browser versions, and unless people have started using it, right? Because CSS is already hard enough to write, right? And on top of it, if you have to add polyfills, or you have to write additional code to support old browsers, it's a little hard. So that is the main reason today I have just handpicked 5 features which you will really be able to use starting today. So the browser support is great. I'm going to show you, I'm going to talk about the browser support for each of these features, and these are something you can be sure that they will be used in the next few years. If not now, you'll have to learn them anywhere down the line, so better be aware now, correct? So some of these are the features that I'm going to be talking about. The very first one is container queries. So you've definitely heard about media queries. If you've ever written anything, any responsive web design, if you've developed, then you definitely know media queries. So the thing is, it's very similar. I'll tell you what container queries are. Now consider this as a card, or something that's on a web page, on the main section of the web page, where you can see an image on the left and some text on the right. It could be anything like a blog post or a person's profile or anything like that. Now this is a component. If you have to display the same thing, maybe on the left, that is on the side navigation or the aside, you will obviously have the image on top and the text at the bottom. So these two essentially have the same data, and majority of the styles are also same, right? Maybe the text color, all of them will be same. The only difference, or a couple of differences, will be that the one on the right, the main section, is flex row, the direction is row, and on the one on the navigation follows the column direction. And of course, as you can see, the image doesn't have any padding on the right side one, but image does have padding on the left. But if you have to do this without container queries, you will probably have to add another class like card narrow or something. So you have a card which has all the general styles, and then you add an additional class to the one on the left, card narrow, and then say flex direction column, and then padding 0 and things like that, right? Now, this means if you're adding additional classes, it's not the exact same component, right? You'll have to know whether it's placed on main section or whether it's placed on the other section. You'll have to know that, and only then apply classes accordingly. But with container queries, this can be avoided. So the way media queries query the entire viewport width, like you can see what the viewport width is, what size the person is viewing on, the device size. Based on that, you can add styles, right? When it comes to container queries, it queries the container's width, like a parent container. You can give any element, you can make any element the parent container, query its width, and based on that, change some styles for the child. So it's that great. So what you have to do is you have to have a card wrap that is a parent for that container. And then you use the property called container type. And you have to mention what kind of container is it. Like, do you want to query the width? Do you want to query the height? So the value that we would need here in this case is called inline size. Now, inline size essentially usually means the width. In some cases it doesn't, but inline size is what we want to query. That's why we are setting the CSS property container type to inline size. And the way we use media queries using the @media rule, we can use the @container rule and specify the condition. Like if the min width is 400 pixels, that is, if the parent container is wider than 400 pixels, then use the flex direction row. Otherwise, maybe set the default style as flex direction column, right? So that way you can simply place that div or that section anywhere. And, based on the width of that card wrap, that is the parent, you will be able to change the styles accordingly. So this way you can reuse the components. And in the future, I believe that a lot of media queries, at least 50% of them, will start being replaced by container queries. That's how powerful it has started to become. Now, if you have multiple containers on a page, which is going to happen, like let's say you have this main section and the sidebar, you might have some other small div that you want to query the size and so on. That at that point you will need to name the container. You want to know which container you're referring to, right? That's where you use the container name property, and you can call it anything. You can give it any name. Like here you can see container name can be called card. So container type and container name are two properties that you would need. You can combine the both, of course, and use the shorthand just container, followed by, the value will be the name of the container, / and then what you're querying, that is inline size. Everything else remains the same. So if you're not able to really imagine how powerful this is or where all it can be used and use cases like that, there is this amazing website called ishadid.com. It's a lab of Ahmad Shadid. Now, he has collected a lot of real world applications for container queries, and he has created examples. So like you can see there's a timeline component, news card, article, and so on. I would really encourage you to go through this list and see how useful this new feature is. So let's look at one of the components, that is the timeline component, right? So you see that when this timeline is placed in the main section, this is how it appears. And the one on the right, you can see the placement. The what do you see? Those rings are smaller and everything is vertical. The timeline is on the left. Here it's on the top. But trust me, this is the exact same markup. The markup doesn't change at all. And instead of using media queries, they've used container queries to change where it's placed, right? So there's no additional class like timeline narrow or something. You don't have to add that. So another example, let's say you have this testimonial kind of a display, a quote and a person's name. So see how it changes based on the width. You see that? So when it's really wide, you saw that there was a background color, and then it started getting smaller. And you're also able to see how the font is able to slowly increase the size proportionate to the width of the container. So how this is done is using container query length units. So you must be aware of viewport length units, right? We always do that. If you want to set a page to 100% of the viewport, we use 100 VW and 100 VH. Those are viewport units. Similarly, there are container query units. So something like, in this case, the font size has been set to 5 CQI. So there are units like CQV, CQW, CQH, and those are container query width and height, and CQI is containers inline size, right? So which is almost the same as container queries width. So in this case, if you use CQW also, you'll get the same result. That means it's 5% of the container's width. That's why we were able to see that the text was increasing in the size and reducing when the container's width changed. So these are some interesting things you can do. Coming to the browser support, I have taken this screenshot from Can I Use, and I have switched to the usage stats, if you can see. So this is how much those browser versions are used which support container queries. So I gave this talk last month at Belgium, and that time the support was not so much. So right now you can see that it's 88% is the usage. I had to take a screenshot once again 4 days ago to change this because already there's a lot of increase, right? Back then, I think it was maybe 83% or something. So as you can see, people are using new browsers, and browsers are supporting this particular feature. 88% is great. You can always use fallbacks if you are particular about supporting this feature. You can use media queries. So the next feature is Subgrid. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's usually it's like a progressive enhancement for grid. That is, when you have nested grid layouts. So you have a huge grid, and those grid items again become grid, and so on. So when you do that, the grid that is inside of that is nested will have no idea of the borders of the parent grid. So you'll not be able to align the grid lines based on the parent. Let me give you an example. So let's say we have this display of 3 cards, which is quite common, like, maybe a user's a team profile or something, where you have a person's photo, some text, and maybe the designation or something like that. So as you can see, the first 3 cards that we placed is a grid layout. It has 3 columns and 1 single row. And each of those grid items is again a grid layout with 3 rows and no columns, 1 column, sorry. So these are the grid lines of the parent, and these are the grid lines of each child. So here there is only 1 row that I've added. If you add few more rows, you'll understand that it doesn't follow the grid lines of the parent at all. It doesn't align. This doesn't look so great. Right? There's no way to do this using just grid layout. If you have to align them entirely, then you might have to change the markup itself, which is obviously not something that you'd want to do. But with Subgrid, we can align these items also based on the parent. So each grid item will be aware of its other grid item and so on. How do you do that? Here's what you would do with normal grid. There's no subgrid here. You'd say display grid for the wrapper. And like I said, grid template columns, repeat 3 1FR, which means there are 3 equal width columns. And then for each item, once again, you have display grid and grid template rows, repeat 3 auto. That is, you're repeating 3 rows with, auto length. You're not fixing the length to be equal or something. So when you want to use subgrid, just change the value of grid template rows to subgrid. Okay, that's the first thing you do. And the second thing you do is you specify how many rows are there by using the grid rows. And it's like you're saying it has to span across so many rows. So starting from line number 1 to line number 4. And that's it. You just have to do these 2 things to be able to align all of them, in a way that everything looks like a grid, though it's a nested grid item. This is, once again, a very great feature which will be used a lot in the future. That's how I predict. Once again, the real world use case for this is probably a footer. So when you see footers on very large websites, you will notice that the heading of the footer is there in each of the grid item, followed by quick links or maybe, blog posts, recent blog posts or something. So as you can see, the third column has a long headline. Without subgrid, what will happen is the other links will obviously float up, and it doesn't look very aligned. So here using subgrid, it's made sure you can make sure that they all look very aligned. So that's one great use case. Coming to the browser support, this is again pretty good. 79% usage. The reason it's low is because Chrome started supporting it very recently, that is from the version 117. So you can see that a lot of people are still stuck at 109 and so on other versions. But very soon the stats is going to change. And you can see that major browsers already support it. And since it's a progressive enhancement thing, we've always been using just grid. So adding subgrid is an enhancement. Definitely recommend going for it. So then comes the third feature, which is new color spaces and color functions. I'll have to give you a little background for this. So a human eye can actually perceive so many millions of colors, right? There are, like when you look at nature or some waterfalls or sunset especially, you can see the vibrance in the sky. You take a photo, it tries to represent the same set of colors, but it's definitely different. It's not the exact same colors. A photo is still fine because these days the kind of devices that you get have these retina display and OLED screens and so many other screens that have come which are able to support a wide set of colors. But still, the range that was there a decade ago is called sRGB. So if this is the number of colors or the range that a human eye can perceive, this sRGB that used to be there, like this RGB color function, hex and HSL, all the ones that you use in CSS, they can only support sRGB range. And the latest devices which have come now can support slightly wider gamut, which is P3, right? So sRGB was lower one, P3 is what is new. You can see that the increase is so much more, right? But we are not able to make the best use of it in CSS because we are simply still using RGB, HSL, and hex values. These can only represent the colors or the shades that you can see in sRGB. So what if you want to display more vibrant colors, something that's more vivid, right? Then you will have to start using these new color functions, which are lab, LCH, OKLab, and OKLCH. Now, the one that I really love is LCH, and I've already started using that. OKLCH is just a slight improvement over LCH. It just fixes some bugs. Now, let's see what exactly this means and why the difference or why you should start using these new ones. Now, RGB is something all of you know. We've been using red. It's a combination of red, blue, and green, 0 to 255. You specify different values and you get different shades of colors. And then HSL is any value of RGB can be converted to HSL. It's hue, saturation, and lightness. Now, hue is that degree on the color wheel, which is like, you can just say blue, green, or purple. You just select the angle. And then saturation is the intensity of that color. And lightness is how light or dark it is. Like if you convert it to grayscale, you'll be able to see which gray shade it is. That is HSL. Now, when it comes to LCH, LCH is nothing but lightness, chroma, and hue. Hue is the same thing as HSL. There's no difference. Chroma is very similar to saturation. That is, it is the intensity of the color, but the value of chroma has no limit. So it has no upper limit. That means it can get as saturated or as vibrant as you need it. So LCH can actually represent colors, the vivid colors, which even devices today is not able to support. So that means tomorrow, if devices get better, LCH already is able to support that range of colors. And when it comes to lightness, though it looks like it's the same thing, it's quite different. So if you say 50% in HSL, it might not mean the same 50% in LCH. So I'll show you a comparison. Yeah, so you can see some HSL values on the left and LCH colors on the right. All of these are at 50% brightness. So don't think that LCH is dull and HSL is bright. No, that's not what it is. What I want you to notice is how different each color is in HSL. Say, for example, the yellow in HSL is so bright. It's supposed to be 50% lightness, but it still appears bright to the human eye. And if you look at this dark blue fourth from the bottom, that appears very dark. So when you say 50%, you cannot really trust that it's 50% for the human eye. But when it comes to LCH, 50% is consistent to the human eye. So you can see that they all are 50% dull, right? Or only 50% vibrant. So why is this important? Let's say you have a button somewhere in your project, which, the HSL value for this exact color is the one on the left, and you can see what the same representation for OKLCH is, right? You can notice that for HSL, it's 50% brightness and OKLCH is 53. That's okay. Let's say in your project, you have a feature where the user can change the theme. So the same purple buttons, whatever, wherever you've used this color, you want to change, the user wants to change that to green. So the user wants to use a green theme. So you might think that just changing the hue will do it, right? You can simply change the hue, keep the same lightness, keep the same saturation, and things will work. So what will happen is in HSL, this is the result that you get. Notice that the saturation is the same, the lightness is the same, you've changed the hue, but it is so much bright and the contrast is gone. You can't display a white text on this shade. The user will not be able to read it. But notice that in OKLCH, the same lightness, same chroma, a different hue will give the exact same contrast ratio. So this is very useful if you're working with colors where you want to simply change the lightness and assume that it will appear the same. You'll have to start using LCH. So just summary, this is what it is. LCH can be used for wider gamut of colors. So if you want to display some extremely vibrant colors on your web page, LCH is one of the ways to go. And the second reason why you should start using it is because of the consistency in the lightness to the human eye. All right, so looking at the browser support, once again, the usage is pretty great. It's 87%. There's nothing wrong. You can start using it right away. There are color pickers available. You can just type OKLCH color picker and you can pick some of the brightest colors and start using them. If you want to support older browsers, you can always add a fallback and convert the same color. It chooses the closest sRGB color and it displays that for older browsers. The fourth feature is the hash selector. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's more commonly known as the parent selector or something. So far in CSS, the only thing that was possible was you could select a child based on a parent. Like, based on the parent's state, you could style the child. But based on the state of the child, you wouldn't be able to style the parent. I'll give you an example. So here, let's say you have multiple divs in your web page and there are paragraphs within each of those divs. And let's say one of the div is special. So the way you would style that paragraph within the special div is like so. You would say div.special, select that particular class, and then simply add a space, or you could even use that arrow mark, which is that's child selector, immediate child selector. You can select that paragraph and you can add the styles. So it's very easy to style a child based on the class of the parent. But if you have to do the reverse, let's say you have some special child paragraph, how will you style the parent div based on this particular paragraph? There was no way to do that in CSS alone. You could probably use JavaScript or something. Now using the hash selector, this is what you can do. You can say div has the special child. So if the div has this child, you can add some styles and it works great. So one of the use cases, the simplest use case for this feature is this particular card. Let's say you have a lot of these menu items or whatever in your database. You don't know which of them have images, which of them don't have. So if there is an image, you can style that, if the div has image, then, display flex so that you're able to display the image on the left and the text on the right. And otherwise, if it doesn't have an image, you can say div has not image or something, and you can add a border on the top. So that's a great way to style parents based on the child state. So has selector is not just a parent selector. It's not just that you can select and you can style the parent. You can also style the siblings, because if you're able to select the parent, you're once again able to select the child of that parent using normal CSS, right? So if you, let's say you have a list of items and one of the list is special, one of the list item is special. Let's say you want to select the next item. It's actually possible in CSS very easily using the sibling selector. So using plus, you'll be able to select the very next sibling, and using tilde, you'll be able to tilde or tilde, however it's pronounced, you'll be able to select all the later siblings. But there is no way to select a previous sibling in CSS. You can't do that using plus or any of the other combinators. Using has, you will be able to do it using this particular syntax. I'm not going to dive into explaining this syntax, but notice how similar it is to the one on the left side. So you can say li has, the next sibling or whatever. You can select the immediate previous sibling using this syntax, and all the earlier siblings using the next line that you can see. Now, why is this useful? I'll show you one example. Let's say you have some list items randomly and you hover over one of them. Notice how the previous and the next item are equally scaled. So let's say the one that is hovered is scaled maybe 200%. The previous sibling and the next sibling both are scaled 150%. This wouldn't be possible without the has selector. So you can actually go to smashingmagazine.com and check the code for it. It's a very great use case. You can even imagine a gallery of images placed horizontally. You hover over one of the image, and something similar you can imagine with images also. Without JavaScript, this was not possible, by the way. Now coming to the browser support, this has fantastic support again. It has 89.2% usage already, but you might notice that red color of Firefox, where also there's a green flag, small one. I don't know if it's visible to you. That means it's already been shipped in the nightly version, Firefox nightly. This feature is available. That means in the next major version, this feature will be released. So you can start learning about it. And once it is shipped, obviously people will start, a lot of people will start updating their browser version and you can use it. Otherwise, all other browsers, you can see that it's already supported. Sorry. Yeah. So the fifth and final feature is new syntax for media queries. This is not as major as the other four that I've spoken about, but something I really feel it's a good enhancement for developers. It increases the developer experience, if not the user experience. So earlier, if you had to target all devices of width greater than 600 pixels, this is what you would do. You'd say at media, min width 600 pixels. But now what you can also do is you can use these greater than, less than, equal to symbols and say that width greater than or equal to 600 pixels. To me, this is definitely more readable and easier to write, because I'll always have to think, should I use max width? Should I use min width? And it takes a second to remember which one to use. This is much easier. So when it comes to a range like media, min width 600 pixels and max width 768 pixels, so verbose, you don't have to use that now. You can simply say 600 pixels less than equal to width less than equal to 768 pixels. Shorter, more readable, more understandable, and so on. And just a moment, my alarm is ringing. I don't know why. Yeah. So it also supports, okay, I think I lost the camera. Give me a moment. Yeah, I hope you all can see me.
Yes, we can see you, Shruti.
Yeah, and hear me as well. So you can also, this new media queries also supports the use of logical operators like or and not. So for example, if you want to say something as specific as, a device that does not have hover or the width is less than 480 pixels, some such random thing, you can even do that now with the latest syntax. So coming to the browser support for this, it's 85%. Definitely you can start using it, but be sure that if you are supporting old browsers, then make sure to use the old syntax, because otherwise without media queries, your web page will not be responsive. So I think that's about the 5 features. You might be wondering, okay, this is great. How do I stay updated now? Today I learned 5 features, but what if I want to know what's upcoming, or which are the features that I should really focus on and ignore all the noise or avoid the shiny new things, but actually focus on the ones that are important? Uh, there is this initiative that was launched 2 years ago called Interop, right? So with this initiative, all the major browser vendors, like all of these, like Microsoft, Google, Firefox team, and Apple, all of these people who are involved in developing the browsers, they meet at the beginning of the year and they discuss and list down all the features that they want to implement in that particular year. So they set some goals and focus on those areas. So which is why we're able to see a lot of new developments, because all the browsers have agreed upon certain features and they're working on it. So this is a screenshot of Interop 2023. So this year, as you can see, there are some 28 focus areas, and majority of them have been implemented in all the browsers. You can see the percentages in Chrome and Edge. 97% have been implemented, and so on. So that way you can go to Interop and you can check the Interop dashboard. They're already discussing the focus areas for 2024. So you can already, if you want to really stay on the edge and learn the features that will slowly be supported in multiple browsers, this is the place to go. I guess that's about it. This is the conclusion of my talk. These are some of my books and courses. Most of you, if you've been following me on Twitter, you've seen this multiple times. You don't want to see it again, I know. So 2 years ago, I wrote this book, CSS Flex and Grid. It's a complete guide to Flexbox and Grid using multiple real world examples, not just some blocks that are placed one below the other and things like that. And then very recently, I wrote a book, Level Up with Tailwind CSS, that also has a video course. So currently Black Friday sale is running, so you can grab these at 50% off, and you can just check my Twitter profile for the link and so on. But for that, you'll have to follow me on Twitter, or at least visit my profile. And there in the bio, you can see a Limey link, which is what you can go to and probably check out my YouTube channel and multiple other courses, whatever else I've done. So yeah, I think that's about it. Over to you, Abbas.
Thank you, Shruti. That was really wonderful. Very informative.
Thank you.
Being a backend developer, I mean, CSS is always tough for me. So I really enjoyed this talk. Thanks for making it look very easy.
Yeah, that's a goal. At least if it looks easy, people will try learn.
Yeah. Okay, now is the question and answer time. So if anyone has any questions, please unmute yourself and ask away.
Should I stop sharing my screen?
Yes, you can, Shruti. Also, I have posted a link to a Google form for the PHP Storm license giveaway. So if you want to get into that contest, please fill in that form. And in a few moments, we'll be running a Wheel of Fortune and picking up one winner. So any questions from anyone?
Hello.
Yes.
Any dates you have decided for Vox Pop release?
Totally out of the discussion, you want to ask? Okay. Yes. So there are so many features that we want to add, and at the same time, so many we want to release at the earliest, because if we just keep adding features, we will keep adding. And for all the others who want to know what we're talking about, currently me and another person who's also very involved in Laravel community from sorry, I always forget where he's from, Portugal. Yeah, from Portugal, Patricio. We both are working on a website builder for people who are not as tech savvy as us, or who are not even developers, people who just want to have a single page application, just a single static site for maybe somebody who's baking at home, or somebody who has a small shop and they just want to have one page website. That's called VoxPop. We are planning to launch that hopefully before the end of this year for people who have joined the waitlist. So if you're very interested to know what this is, it'll be completely built using Tailwind CSS. So the premium users can even download all the templates. We'll have a lot of pre-built templates that people can simply come and start editing and publishing. And if you're a developer interested, you can even download the templates if you're a premium user. So if you want to sign up for early access, VoxPop, I think I'll type it here, voxpopsite.com. is the website URL. Yeah. Okay, didn't link. Maybe I didn't add HTTP, but it's okay. You can copy and you can check it out. You can sign up for early access and you'll receive a mail very soon. Thank you for asking that question.
Thanks, Shruti.
You're welcome.
Anyone has any other questions?
Hey, Shruti, this is Purnima. Just wanted to know if the container queries and all these subgrid, is there Tailwind support already added to these new features that we just discussed?
Yes, container queries, it's not added directly to the main, what do you say, library, Tailwind CSS, but there is a first party plugin. So if you've ever used plugins like typography or aspect ratio, it's developed by the Tailwind team itself. Very easy to use. You can import the plugin and start using it. So that is container query. You can use it right away. Subgrid, no, the support is not yet there for now. But then again, you can add your own utility classes, or you can add custom CSS, and you can even use maybe arbitrary properties for this. But grid as such itself is very complicated to implement using utility classes. So subgrid might not be supported anytime soon, but you never know. The next major version might have this.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
Okay, seems like we are good, everyone.
If like outside of the topics, question is still allowed, then I have some questions.
Yeah, sure.
One questions at least.
Sure, Punyam.
How was your full stack Europe trip?
Oh, that was really fantastic experience. As a speaker, and it was very well done. The whole organization, everything was very well managed. Everything went so smooth, and a lot of work obviously went in the back end to make it appear so smooth. And all of the speakers were amazing, especially people traveled from like everywhere else, and the range of topics was so huge. The name full stack totally was justified. There were talks on even indie hackers, like how to become an indie hacker, talks about database, talks about front end and state management. There were so many things. So it was really the most wonderful experience, and I loved speaking there.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone, any other question? Either for Shruti or anything related with Laravel Nagpur meetups, you can feel free to ask me as well. And while we are at it, I hope everyone knows about LaraCon India happening in March 2024. And I would urge everyone to book your tickets and be there. It is going to be a wonderful conference.
Yeah.
We have,
Otherwise, after that, they'll see the photos and videos and
yeah,
everyone's going to regret.
you are going to regret if you miss this one.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Okay, so I have the names for the PHP Storm contest. So let me share my screen, run the Wheel of Fortune, and we will then pick up winner. Just a moment.
I think there's a tradition of every meetup, right?
It is a tradition, yes. Okay, so can you all see the Wheel of Fortune
Yes.
spinning there? Okay, so best of luck everyone who has filled the form. I'm running the wheel now. Congratulations, Harsh.
Thank you, sir.
You there, Harsh?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So how will you be using this license, Harsh? What will you be developing with this?
Yeah, definitely. Since I'm working on both front end and back end, I think this will be very useful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then I think that's it for tonight. Harsh, I'll be sending you your license on your email.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for joining us, and hopefully I will see all these faces next month as well. For those who are connecting us for the first time, Laravel Nagpur meetups happen every month. This has been going on for the past 4 years now. So please subscribe our YouTube channel. I will also be uploading this recording on our YouTube channel, as well as please follow Laravel Nagpur on Twitter and other social media platforms. And we generally announce about our meetups over there. And thanks, Shruti. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for speaking on this topic. And
Thank you.
hope to see you again in the future.
Yeah, definitely. With different topics.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone. Have a good evening. Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.